The yellow school bus pulled up to Lincoln High School on a crisp Monday morning in October. Students poured out, chatting about weekend plans and upcoming tests. But everyone stopped talking when they saw her. She stepped off the bus slowly, like she was testing each step. Her skin was so pale it almost seemed to glow in the morning sunlight. Her dark eyes were bigger than normal, taking up more space on her face than they should. She wore regular jeans and a blue sweater, but somehow she looked like she was wearing a costume. "Who's that?" whispered Jake to his friend Tommy as they watched her walk toward the main building. "New exchange student, I think," Tommy replied. "My mom works in the office. She said something about some weird program from way up north. The girl's name was Zara, and she was supposed to be from some tiny village in Alaska, where people lived differently." That's what the principal told everyone during morning announcements. Mr. Peterson explained that her community was very isolated and had different customs, so everyone should be patient and helpful. In first period English, Zara sat in the back corner. When Mrs. Williams called on her to introduce herself, she stood up very straight and spoke in a careful voice. "Hello. I am Zara. I come from a place that is very far from here. Everything is different there. I am here to learn about your ways." She paused, then added, "I mean our ways, human ways." The class exchanged looks. That was a weird way to put it. During lunch, Zara sat alone in the cafeteria, staring at her sandwich like she'd never seen bread before. She picked it up, examined it from different angles, then took a tiny bite. Her face scrunched up in confusion. "You okay?" asked David, a friendly kid from her math class. He sat down across from her with his own lunch. Zara looked startled. "Yes, this food is interesting. How do you make the bread so soft?" David laughed. "It's just regular sandwich bread. You can buy it at any store." "Store," Zara repeated slowly like she was memorizing the word. "Yes, I must learn about stores." In biology class, things got really weird. When Mr. Jackson started talking about how animals reproduce, Zara suddenly became very alert. She leaned forward and started writing notes faster than anyone had ever seen. Her pen moved across the paper like lightning. "Now, human reproduction works similarly to other mammals," Mr. Jackson explained, pointing to a diagram on the board. "The process involves—" Zara's hand shot up. "Excuse me. Could you explain this process in more detail? For educational purposes?" "Of course. I need to understand exactly how this works." The whole class turned to stare at her. Her cheeks turned pink, but she kept looking at the teacher with those big, intense eyes. "Well, we'll cover that in more detail next week," Mr. Jackson said, looking a bit uncomfortable. "For now, let's focus on the basics." After class, Zara approached the teacher's desk. "Could you recommend books or websites where I can research this topic further? It's very important for my cultural studies." That afternoon, the Johnson family picked her up from school. They were her host family for the exchange program. Mrs. Johnson was a sweet woman who worked as a nurse, and Mr. Johnson fixed cars for a living. They had agreed to take in an exchange student to help their own kids learn about different cultures. "How was school, honey?" Mrs. Johnson asked as they drove home. "Educational," Zara replied. "I learned that human food requires chewing much, longer than I expected, and that humans have very complicated social behaviors during the midday eating period." Mrs. Johnson and her teenage daughter Lisa exchanged glances in the front seat. "You mean lunch?" Lisa asked. "What's complicated about lunch?" "The way humans group together. The unspoken rules about where to sit and who to talk to. It's fascinating how you organize yourselves without any clear authority figure giving orders." That evening at dinner, Zara continued to surprise everyone. She ate very little, claiming she didn't need much food. She asked strange questions like, "Why do humans eat together in groups?" and "Is the sharing of food a bonding ritual?" "Where exactly are you from again?" Mr. Johnson asked, setting down his fork. "A very isolated place," Zara said quickly. "We don't interact with outsiders much. Everything here is new to me. Later, when Mrs. Johnson was helping Zara set up the computer in her room, she noticed how Zara stared at the machine like it was magical. "Have you never used a computer before?" Mrs. Johnson asked gently. "Not exactly like this one," Zara replied. "Could you show me how to search for information on the internet?" Mrs. Johnson spent an hour teaching Zara the basics. She showed her how to open a web browser, how to type in searches, and how to find reliable websites. Zara absorbed every detail with incredible focus. "What kind of things do you want to research?" Mrs. Johnson asked. Zara hesitated. "Human behavior, social customs, how people interact with each other, especially—" She paused, her cheeks turning pink again. "Especially how humans form romantic connections." Mrs. Johnson smiled warmly. "Oh, honey, that's perfectly normal. All teenagers are curious about relationships. Just make sure you're looking at educational websites, okay?" After Mrs. Johnson left, Zara sat alone with the computer. The screen glowed in the dark room as she began her research. Her fingers moved carefully over the keyboard as she typed her first search. "How do humans choose mates?" The results filled her with wonder and confusion. Page after page of information about dating, love, marriage, and relationships. This was so different from anything she knew. Where she came from, these things were decided very differently. Actually, they barely existed at all. She clicked on article after article, reading about first dates, holding hands, kissing, and something called falling in love. Each new piece of information raised more questions. Why did humans make this process so complicated? Why did emotions play such a big role? And why did reading about it make her feel strange inside? As the night wore on, Zara found herself thinking about David, the boy who had sat with her at lunch. He had been kind to her when he didn't have to be. When he smiled, something weird happened in her chest, like a warm feeling spreading through her body. Was this what the websites called attraction? She had come to this school with a mission. She was supposed to observe and learn about human behavior, then report back to her people. But already on just her first day, she was discovering that humans were far more complex and interesting than anyone had told her. The next morning, Zara walked into school with new purpose. She had spent all night reading about human social interactions, and now she wanted to see them in action. She watched couples holding hands in the hallways, noticed how friends hugged when they saw each other, and observed the complex dance of teenage relationships. When David waved at her in the hallway, that warm feeling came back stronger than before. She found herself looking forward to lunch, hoping he might sit with her again. This was definitely not part of her original mission, but she couldn't help herself. As she settled into her second day at Lincoln High, Zara realized that studying humans was going to be much more complicated than she had expected, and much more interesting. That night, after the Johnson family had gone to bed, Zara sat cross-legged on her bed with the laptop glowing in front of her. The house was quiet except for the gentle hum of the heater and Mr. Johnson snoring down the hall. This was her time to really dig deep into understanding humans. She opened the web browser and stared at the search box for a moment. Where should she even begin? Her fingers hovered over the keyboard before she finally typed, "How do humans find romantic partners?" The results amazed her. Thousands and thousands of articles, videos, and websites all dedicated to this one topic. She clicked on the first link and found herself reading about something called dating apps. Humans actually use technology to find other humans to connect with? Fascinating. She spent the next hour clicking from link to link, each page opening up new questions in her mind. There were articles about first date ideas, how to know if someone likes you, and signs of true love. Each concept seemed more complex than the last. On her home planet, reproduction was simple and practical. When two beings were genetically compatible and ready to create offspring, they would merge their energy fields in a brief scientific process. There were no emotions involved, no complicated rituals, no uncertainty. It was efficient and logical. But humans? They had turned the whole process into an art form. She found a website that explained body language in relationships. According to the article, Humans communicated attraction through subtle signals like eye contact, smiling, leaning closer, and something called mirroring each other's movements. Zara thought back to lunch with David. Had he been showing any of these signs? She couldn't remember. Her search history grew longer as the night went on. What is flirting? How to tell if someone has a crush on you? What does it mean when humans hug? Why do humans kiss before mating? That last search led her down a rabbit hole of information about kissing. Humans press their lips together as a sign of affection, and they enjoyed it? The concept seemed so strange to her. Her people didn't even have the same type of lips that humans did in their natural form. She found a video titled, "The Science of Kissing," and watched with wide eyes as a narrator explained how kissing released chemicals in the human brain that created feelings of happiness and attachment. So it wasn't just a random custom. It actually served a biological purpose. How clever. Around 2 a.m, she discovered something called romantic movies. She clicked on a trailer for a popular love story and watched as 2 humans met, argued, gradually fell in love, faced obstacles, and finally ended up together. The female human cried tears of joy, and the male human declared his eternal devotion. Zara paused the video and stared at the screen. Eternal devotion? Humans promised to care for one person for their entire lives? This was completely different from her species, where partnerships were temporary and purely functional. She searched for more movies and found hundreds of them, all telling similar stories of humans finding love, losing love, fighting for love, and celebrating love. There were comedies, dramas, and even something called romantic comedies that combined both. Humans had created an entire entertainment industry around the concept of romantic relationships. The next morning at school, Zara felt like she was seeing everything with new eyes. In the hallway, she watched a couple holding hands and noticed how they walked in sync, matching each other's pace perfectly. The website had called this mirroring behavior, and here it was happening right in front of her. During lunch, she positioned herself where she could observe the different social groups. There were the couples who sat close together, sharing food and whispering to each other. There were friends who laughed loudly and pushed each other playfully. And there were the single students who kept glancing hopefully at others, clearly, wanting to make connections. When David approached her table again, Zara tried to remember everything she had read about human interaction. Should she make more eye contact? Mirror his body language? Smile more? "Hey, how's your second day going?" David asked, setting down his lunch tray. "Very educational," Zara replied, then caught herself. That sounded too formal. "I mean, it's good. Better now that you're here." David smiled, and Zara felt that strange warm feeling in her chest again. According to her research, this might be what humans called butterflies in your stomach, though she couldn't understand why they would compare the feeling to insects. "You seem different today," David observed. "More, I don't know, relaxed?" "Maybe," Zara nodded. "I've been learning about human social customs. It helps to understand the rules." "Rules?" David laughed. "There aren't really rules for making friends. You just be yourself. Be yourself." "But what if yourself wasn't actually human?" Zara pushed that thought away and focused on David's face. He had kind eyes, she noticed, and when he smiled, small lines appeared at the corners of those eyes. Her research had mentioned that genuine smiles involved the muscles around the eyes, not just the mouth. After school, Zara couldn't wait to get back to her computer. She had so many new observations to research. She had noticed that when couples argued in the hallways, they often stood closer together afterward, as if the conflict had somehow brought them closer. She had seen friends comfort each other with hugs when one seemed upset, and she had watched David throughout the day, noticing how he was kind to everyone, not just her. That evening, Mrs. Johnson knocked on her door. "Zara, honey, I was cleaning up the computer and noticed your search history. Are you finding what you need for your cultural studies?" Zara's cheeks turned pink. She had forgotten that other people might see what she was looking up. "Yes, it's very helpful. Human relationships are more complex than I expected." Mrs. Johnson sat down on the edge of the bed. You know, if you have questions about dating or relationships, you can always talk to me. I know it can be confusing, especially if you come from a place where things are done differently. In my community, we don't have these concepts, Zara said carefully. Partners are chosen for practical reasons. The idea of choosing based on emotions is new to me. Oh, you poor thing, Mrs. Johnson said softly. That sounds so lonely. Here, we believe that love makes life worth living. The right person can make you feel like you can conquer the world. After Mrs. Johnson left, Zara returned to her research with new purpose. She wanted to understand this thing called love that humans valued so highly. She found articles about different types of love: romantic love, friendship love, family love. Each type seemed to involve different behaviors and expectations. She discovered something called dating advice and read countless articles about how to know if someone liked you back. The signs included paying special attention to you, remembering things you said, finding excuses to spend time with you, and something called teasing that was apparently different from being mean. As she thought about her interactions with David, she realized he might be showing some of these signs. He had remembered that she was new and made an effort to sit with her both days. He asked questions about her background and seemed genuinely interested in her answers. And today, he had complimented her, saying she seemed more relaxed. But the most confusing part of her research was learning about something humans called heartbreak. Apparently, when romantic relationships ended, humans experienced genuine physical and emotional pain. They cried, lost sleep, couldn't eat, and sometimes took months or even years to recover. This baffled Zara completely. Why would humans willingly enter into relationships that could cause such suffering? Her research suggested that the joy of love was worth the risk of heartbreak, but she couldn't understand how that math worked out. As she closed the laptop that night, Zara realized that her simple mission to observe human behavior had become something much more complicated. She wasn't just studying humans anymore. She was beginning to feel like one. And that feeling was both thrilling and terrifying. By her third week at Lincoln High, Zara thought she had human behavior figured out. She had read dozens of articles, watched countless videos, and observed her classmates like a scientist studying lab specimens. She felt confident in her ability to blend in and act normal. But then everything started falling apart. It began during lunch on a Wednesday. Zara was sitting at her usual table, the one by the window where she could watch the courtyard, when David approached with someone new. A girl with curly brown hair and a bright smile walked beside him, her hand casually linked with his arm. "Hey, Zara," David said, seeming a bit nervous. "I want you to meet Ashley. She's my girlfriend." The word hit Zara like a physical blow. Girlfriend. She had read about this concept extensively, but seeing it in person was completely different. Ashley smiled warmly and extended her hand for a handshake, but Zara just stared at their joined arms. "Nice to meet you," Ashley said cheerfully. "David's told me so much about you. He says you're really interesting." Zara managed to shake Ashley's hand, but something strange was happening inside her chest. It felt like her heart was being squeezed by an invisible fist. Her research had described this feeling as jealousy, but reading about it and experiencing it were two completely different things. "You okay?" David asked, noticing how pale Zara had become. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," Zara said quickly, but her voice came out higher than usual. "It's nice to meet you, Ashley." As the couple sat down at her table, Zara tried to act normal, but everything felt wrong. When Ashley laughed at David's jokes, Zara felt that squeezing sensation again. When David shared his chips with Ashley, Zara found herself gripping her water bottle so tight she was afraid it might crack. The worst part came when Ashley leaned over and gave David a quick kiss on the cheek. It was just a small, casual gesture, the kind of thing Zara had observed hundreds of times over the past few weeks. But this time, it felt like watching someone steal something that belonged to her. Zara jumped up from her seat so suddenly that she knocked over her chair. "I have to go," she said, her voice shaking. "I forgot about library, books." She practically ran out of the cafeteria, leaving David and Ashley staring after her in confusion. The rest of the day was torture. In every class, Zara found herself thinking about David and Ashley together. She imagined them holding hands in the hallway, sharing secrets, making plans for the weekend. Each thought made that painful feeling in her chest grow stronger. After school, she couldn't concentrate on anything. Mrs. Johnson asked her about homework, but Zara just mumbled something about being tired. At dinner, she barely touched her food, earning worried looks from the whole Johnson family. "Are you feeling sick, honey?" Mrs. Johnson asked, pressing the back of her hand against Zara's forehead. "You don't have a fever, but you seem really off today." "I'm fine," Zara insisted, but even she could hear how unconvincing she sounded. That evening, Zara tried to distract herself with more research, but every article about relationships just made her feel worse. She read about heartbreak and unrequited love, recognizing her own symptoms in every description. The tight feeling in her chest, the difficulty concentrating, the way food tasted like cardboard. It was all there in black and white. The next day at school, David found her sitting alone in the library during lunch. "Hey," he said softly, sliding into the chair across from her. "You've been avoiding me. Did I do something wrong?" Zara looked up at him, and for a moment she forgot how to breathe. His dark eyes were full of genuine concern, and his hair was slightly messy from the wind outside. This was the face she had been thinking about constantly for weeks. The person who had been so kind to her when no one else bothered. "You didn't do anything wrong," she said quietly. "Then why did you run away yesterday? Ashley thinks you don't like her." At the mention of Ashley's name, that painful squeezing sensation came back. "She seems very nice," Zara managed to say. David studied her face carefully. "Zara, what's really going on? And don't say nothing, because I can tell something's bothering you." There was something in his voice, a gentleness that broke down all her careful defenses. For weeks, she had been pretending to be something she wasn't, studying human behavior like it was a foreign language. But sitting there, looking into David's worried eyes, she couldn't keep pretending anymore. "I've been researching," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Researching what? How humans, how people, how your species." She stopped and took a shaky breath. "I Googled how humans mate." "Is it really like that?" David blinked, clearly not expecting that answer. "I'm sorry, what?" The words started pouring out of Zara before she could stop them. "I've been trying to understand how human relationships work, but it's so confusing. Where I come from, we don't have these concepts. We don't choose partners based on emotions or attraction. We don't have dating or kissing or any of these complicated rituals." "Where exactly do you come from?" David asked slowly. "Somewhere very different," Zara said, her voice getting stronger as she continued. "Somewhere where reproduction is scientific and practical, where we don't have feelings like jealousy or heartbreak or—" She paused, looking directly at him. "Or whatever this feeling is that I get when I see you with Ashley." David was quiet for a long moment, processing what she had just said. "Zara, are you saying you have feelings for me?" The question hung in the air between them. Zara had spent weeks reading about this moment, about confessing feelings and putting yourself emotionally at risk. But all her research hadn't prepared her for how terrifying it would actually be. "I don't know," she admitted. "I've never had feelings like this before. In my research, I learned about something called a crush, and the symptoms match what I've been experiencing. Increased heart rate when you're near, difficulty concentrating when you're not, jealousy when I see you with other people." She was describing her emotions like they were scientific data, and David couldn't help but smile a little at how clinical she sounded. "But that's not the weird part," Zara continued, and David's smile faded. "The weird part is that I keep referring to humans as your species instead of our species. I keep talking about this planet like I'm visiting from somewhere else. And the truth is—" She stopped talking and looked around the library, making sure no one was listening. When she spoke again, her voice was so quiet David had to lean forward to hear her. "David, what would you say if I told you I wasn't actually from Alaska? What if I told you I was from somewhere much, much farther away? David stared at her, his mind racing. All the strange things about Zara suddenly started making sense. Her pale, almost glowing skin, her unusually large eyes, the way she talked about human customs like she was learning about them for the first time, her complete fascination with basic concepts like dating and relationships. How far away? He asked quietly. Zara looked out the library window at them, blue sky above. About 47 light years. The silence that followed was deafening. David sat perfectly still, staring at her face, searching for any sign that she was joking. But Zara's expression was completely serious, and those big, dark eyes held a sadness he had never seen before. "You're not from Alaska," he said finally. "No. You're not even from Earth." "No." David leaned back in his chair, his world shifting completely. The girl he had been eating lunch with, the girl he had been helping with homework, the girl who had just confessed to having feelings for him wasn't human, and somehow that explained everything. David sat in the library chair, staring at Zara like he was seeing her for the first time. Which, in a way, he was. The afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows seemed to make her pale skin glow even more than usual, and those large, dark eyes that had always seemed unusual now looked completely otherworldly. 47 light years, he repeated slowly, his voice barely a whisper. Zara nodded, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I know how this sounds. I know you probably think I'm crazy or lying or both, but I've been carrying this secret for weeks and I can't pretend anymore." David's mind was racing. Part of him wanted to laugh and tell her she had a great imagination. Part of him wanted to run away and pretend this conversation never happened. But a bigger part of him was remembering all the strange little things about Zara that had never quite made sense. "The way you eat," he said suddenly. "You always look at food like you've never seen it before." "Because I haven't," Zara replied. "Where I come from, we don't consume nutrition the same way humans do. And the questions you ask about why people hug, why we share meals, why we have emotions about everything. All of that is foreign to my people. We're much more practical." David leaned forward, his curiosity overcoming his shock. "What are your people like?" Zara hesitated. This was the moment she had been dreading, but also the moment she had been hoping for. Someone to finally tell the truth to. "We're peaceful," she began. "We don't have wars or violence like humans do, but we also don't have—" She gestured vaguely between them. "This. Whatever this feeling is that I have when I look at you. We don't form individual attachments. We work together for the good of everyone, but we don't have personal relationships." "That sounds lonely," David said softly. "I never thought so before. But being here, watching humans, learning about love and friendship and all these connections you make with each other." Zara's voice trailed off. "I'm starting to understand what I've been missing." David was quiet for a moment, processing everything. Then he asked the question that had been building in his mind. "Why are you here? On Earth, I mean." Zara looked around the library again, making sure they were still alone. "My people sent me to observe and learn about humans. We've been watching your planet for a long time, trying to decide if we should make contact. I'm here to study your behavior and report back. So I'm like, a test subject?" The hurt in David's voice made Zara's chest tighten again. "You were supposed to be, but then you were kind to me on my first day. And you kept being kind, and everything got complicated." "Complicated how?" "Because I started caring about you as an individual instead of just seeing you as a specimen to study, and that's not supposed to happen. My people don't form personal attachments, but somehow being around humans, being around you—" She looked directly at him. "I think I'm changing." David stared at her, trying to wrap his head around everything she was telling him. "Can you prove it? That you're really, you know?" Zara glanced around one more time, then slowly held out her hand palm up. David watched in amazement as her skin began to change color, shifting from pale pink to a soft blue, then to silver, then back to pink again. Temperature control, she explained quietly. And I can see different light spectrums than humans. She looked at him, and for a moment her eyes seemed to shimmer with colors he couldn't name. Right now I can see the electromagnetic field around your body. It's brighter when you're nervous or excited. David stared at his own hand, trying to see what she was seeing. What else can you do? Not much that would be noticeable to humans. We're not that different physically. The main differences are mental and emotional. She paused. Or they were until I came here. What do you mean? I'm changing, David. Every day I'm here, I feel more human. I care about things I never cared about before. I worry about whether people like me. I get jealous when I see you, with Ashley. She laughed, but it sounded sad. I've learned what heartbreak feels like just from reading about it online. David was quiet for a long time, staring out the library window. Finally, he asked, "What happens when your mission is over?" The question Zara had been dreading. "I'm supposed to go home and report what I've learned. Then my people will decide whether to make contact with humanity. And if they decide not to, then this will probably be the last time our species interact for a very long time. What about you? Do you want to go back?" Zara considered the question. A month ago, the answer would have been obvious. Of course she wanted to go home. Earth was just a temporary assignment, and humans were just subjects to study. But now, I don't know, she admitted. Home doesn't feel like home anymore when I think about it. But Earth isn't really my home either. I'm caught between two worlds, and I don't fully belong to either one. David reached across the table and gently took her hand. Her skin was cooler than human skin, but it warmed under his touch. "You belong here with me," he said simply. The words hit Zara harder than any emotion she had experienced yet. This was what her research had called love, wasn't it? This feeling of connection, of wanting to be with someone no matter what obstacles stood in the way. "But what about Ashley?" she asked. David was quiet for a moment. "Ashley and we're friends who thought we might be more, but we're not really in love, not like—" He squeezed Zara's hand. "Not like what I'm feeling right now." "What are you feeling right now?" "Confused, scared, amazed." He smiled at her. "And something else I can't quite name. Something I've never felt before." "That's how I feel all the time now," Zara said. "Like, I'm experiencing emotions that don't have names yet." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, hands linked across the library table. Finally, David spoke again. "So what happens now? Do you have to tell your people about this?" He gestured. "Between them. I don't know. This wasn't supposed to happen. I don't think they have protocols for what to do when an observer falls in love with a subject. Is that what this is? Love?" Zara thought about all her research, all the articles and movies and songs about love that she had studied. None of them had quite captured what she was feeling now. This mixture of joy and terror, this sense of finding something she didn't know she was looking for. "I think so," she said. "According to everything I've read, this is what humans call falling in." "Love." David smiled, and Zara felt that warm feeling spread through her entire body. "Then I guess we're both learning something new." As the final bell rang and students began filtering into the library for after-school study groups, David and Zara reluctantly let go of each other's hands. But something fundamental had changed between them. The secret was out. And somehow, that made everything both simpler and infinitely more complicated. "What do we do now?" Zara asked. "I guess we figure it out together," David replied. "One day at a time." But even as he said it, they both knew that time was something they might not have very much of. 3 weeks after Zara's confession in the library, everything changed again. She was sitting in her room doing homework when a small device hidden in her dresser drawer began to glow with a soft blue light. Her heart sank as she recognized the signal, a message from home. With trembling fingers, she activated the device. A holographic image appeared, showing the face of her superior, Commander Vex. His expression was stern, and his large, dark eyes held no warmth. "Observer Zara," his voice said in their native language, which sounded like a mixture of musical tones and whispers. "Your mission is being terminated early. You have 48 hours to complete your final report and prepare for extraction." Zara stared at the image in shock. "But Commander, I haven't finished my observations. I need more time too. The Council has decided that humanity is not ready for contact. Your reports have been concerning. You've shown too much emotional involvement with the subjects. This mission is over." The hologram flickered and disappeared, leaving Zara alone in her room with her worst nightmare coming true. 48 hours. 2 days to say goodbye to everything she had come to love about this strange, wonderful planet. 2 days to say goodbye to David. She sat on her bed, staring at the spot where the hologram had been, trying to process what this meant. She could go home and return to her old life, pretending that these months on Earth had never happened. Or she could... No, that wasn't really an option, was it? If she refused to return, she would be abandoning her family, her people, everything she had ever known. And David would be stuck with someone who could never truly belong to his world. The next morning at school, Zara couldn't concentrate on anything. During lunch, David immediately noticed something was wrong. "You look like someone died," he said, sitting down across from her with his usual concern. "What's going on?" Zara looked around the cafeteria at all the human faces, all the conversations, and laughter and drama that had fascinated her for months. Soon this would all be just a memory. "I have to go home," she said quietly. David's face went pale. "What do you mean? Like back to your host family?" "No. Home. My people are calling me back. I have one more day." The words hit David like a physical blow. They had spent the past 3 weeks getting closer, sharing secrets and learning about each other's worlds. He had started imagining a future where somehow they could make this work. And now, "One day," he repeated. "That's it?" Zara nodded, fighting back the tears that had become so familiar to her since learning about human emotions. "My superior says I've become too emotionally involved. They think I've compromised the mission." "Have you?" Zara looked at him, really looked at him. His messy dark hair, his kind eyes, the way he was leaning forward like he wanted to protect her from whatever was hurting her. "Completely," she said. That afternoon, instead of going to their usual classes, David and Zara walked out of school together. They didn't talk about where they were going. They just walked, holding hands, trying to memorize the feeling of being together. They ended up at the park where David used to play as a kid. The autumn leaves were falling around them in shades of gold and red that Zara had never seen on her home planet. Everything about this moment felt precious and fragile. "I've been thinking," David said, as they sat on a bench under an old oak tree. "What if you stayed?" "I can't. If I don't return, my people will assume something happened to me. They might decide humans are dangerous and avoid contact forever." "And if you do return?" Zara was quiet for a long moment. "Then I go back to my old life. I pretend none of this ever happened. I pretend I never learned what it feels like to care about someone more than yourself." They sat in silence, watching children play on the swings in the distance. Normal human children living normal human lives, unaware that someone from another world was sitting just a few feet away, having her heart broken. "I want to show you something," Zara said suddenly. She reached into her backpack and pulled out the communication device. "This is how I talk to my people." David examined the small, crystalline object. It was beautiful, almost like a piece of jewelry, but it hummed with energy he couldn't understand. "What does it do?" "It allows instant communication across space. But it only works one way from here. I can receive messages, but I can only send one message back." "What kind of message?" Zara looked at him, and David could see an idea forming in her mind. "A final report about what I learned here." "What are you going to tell them?" The truth, that humans are complicated and messy and emotional, that you fight with each other but also love each other fiercely, that you create art and music and stories just because they're beautiful, that you're capable of both great kindness and terrible cruelty, sometimes in the same day. She paused, looking out at the park where teenagers were playing frisbee and elderly couples were feeding ducks. And I'm going to tell them that despite all your flaws, humanity is worth knowing. That love isn't a weakness, it's what makes you stronger. David felt his throat tighten. And then what? Then I go home, and maybe someday, when my people are ready, they'll come back to meet yours properly. What about us? Zara turned to face him fully. David, in all my research about human relationships, I learned about something called a first love. The article said it's the relationship that teaches you what love feels like, even if it doesn't last forever. So this is it? We're just going to be each other's first love and then move on? No, Zara said, surprising him. We're going to be each other's proof that love can exist between any two beings, no matter how different they are. We're going to be the reason I fight to convince my people that your species is worth knowing. She reached into her bag again and pulled out a small crystal, similar to the communication device but smaller. This is a memory crystal. It can store one message and replay it indefinitely. What kind of message? Zara smiled, and for the first time in days it reached her eyes. A love letter, to be delivered 47 light years away, to someone who taught an alien girl what it means to be human. David took the crystal, feeling its warm weight in his palm. And what am I supposed to do with this? Wait, hope, and remember that, somewhere in the universe, someone loves you enough to risk everything for the chance that our worlds might meet again someday. That evening, they spent hours walking around town, visiting all the places that had become special to them. The library where she had confessed her feelings, the cafeteria where they had shared their first lunch, the classroom where she had asked all those strange questions about human reproduction that had started this whole journey. As the sun set, painting the sky in colors that reminded Zara of home, they found themselves back at the park. David recorded his message on the crystal, telling Zara's people about the girl who had changed his life, about the love that had grown between two beings from different worlds, and about his hope that someday the distance between their planets wouldn't matter. The next morning, Zara was gone. The Johnson family found a note thanking them for their kindness, along with a story about a family emergency that required her immediate return to Alaska. David found his own note in his locker, along with coordinates where he could point a telescope to see her star. Years later, when David became an astronomer, he would spend many nights pointing his telescope at those coordinates, wondering if somewhere out there, Zara was looking back at Earth and remembering the boy who taught her how to love. And on a planet 47 light years away, Zara kept the memory crystal close to her heart, playing David's message whenever she needed to remember that love was real, that it was worth fighting for, and that someday two worlds might be close enough for love to bridge the distance between them.